Hello, Facebook and YouTube primarily. There are a bunch of Wethersfield police, retired and standing, involved with other police forms, and former director of the FBI in his defended capacities. Recorded involved with various natures of courts, judges, and prosecutors and their families since they were kids. And right now, with campuses, with wire crime acts and methods, and roles with a method of identity thefts and frauds. That the evidence is revealed criminally foreign influence readings of statutes regarding identity thefts and frauds. We have systemic sequence shift styles. We have systemic allegations makers against people. Identity thefts and frauds further. All kinds of ways simultaneous. Because what our value/value progression is as an identity of volume/S, individuals grouped in together, species identity of volume. There was a predicate acts delivery system method entrenched in America since before our founding parents were born, a method, and it had already been sustained. And roles with that method were/are increasingly manifest as qualities of fact-keeping nature, as identities of fact-keeping nature, as titles, names, branches of government themselves, sciences themselves. They are abridged. All identity of the ground locations themselves, let alone us, let alone our most forsaken, let alone the most forsaken aspects of every weakness of us, employed to keep the sequence. See, when those are simultaneously valued, how we are individual grouped in together, species identity of volume, it is in that sequence. Because nothing is sequence nature alone. Everything has one simultaneous nature, which is an identity of relativity, inseparable from all things. And it is invisible, but it is also discernible because its identity of relationship to itself is also distinctly, non-distinctly, and simultaneously inseparable from all things and increasing. And distinctly, non-distinctly, and simultaneously from the value of that. It's well distinctly as well. Only increasing. So this is where volume is value as nature/nature as value. This is volume theory and counter theory. And where and how it is volume science. Because this is observable, and ancient English was revealed to teach this. More probably and or more practically concluding, summarizing, that the ancients revealed English, not the semi-ancients. The ancients revealed what was only semi-preserved as Latin, as Greek. I'll whisper Greek, as Native American. They were separated from their means, from their obviously, they learned through time, humanity, actual evolution. Before the sciences became criminally foreign influence, could afford anyone to understand history. Couldn't afford anyone to fathom evolution science leading its identity of value/value progression. That one invention's work and we're not in relationship to it. They are further positive or not in relationship to it. See, this is where we come to the difference between criminal insidiousness natures of positive and of negative in collusion with each other. For that predicate acts delivery system method. They had to invent ways to keep self-valued, breaching screens, breaching tools, and breaching weapons ourselves, against ourselves. Because this is a method of criminally foreign influence maintenance to already having been self-valued, criminally foreign influence, all locations, areas, and states. Therefore, all victims. propagated as such for the value progression, for the commodity of defenses of that, of the fact treatment nature styles, uses of tactically, criminally foreign influence premises treatments, sequence treatments, finite, active, progressive treatments. Where positives, where subject, where facts are the topic. For example, we have abridged sciences, offensively needing to keep correlation natures, inherent active and progressive means, and by two identities of sequence/simultaneous nature further, but simultaneously increasing as value with them in parallel, where and how they are one identity of value progression, making more of its bodies of values. Value as nature/nature as value, no. Identity of forever nature. Only the extent of this is debatable. Only people could get away with debating such and pretending it's debatable is because is recorded, because they need to set their self, because of how self-valued sequence shifts, finite, active, progressive, and identity lies, and delusions, physical delusions, we're going to call them. I'm not a doctor. I'm going to delineate the delusions from the criminal foreign influences of the doctors, especially of logic. But of the other sciences, I don't have to be a doctor, and because per their roles with the identity of the ground with them. We have the answers. All we need is free speech. Free speech doesn't mean, oh, we see you spoke, you made a word. Someone will be able to call someone else. If there are people saying, well, we need to do something to protect individuals, because they know we have to call other people. They've been fabricating audio and video with other countries, our locations, states and areas. Here and there, hundreds of countries at once, shared here and there. Their logic they are shared through is only capable of self-valuing each identity of the ground, locations, correlation nature, hurt. Separated, self-valued separated by other things other than selves. Needing it. Separated from correlation nature. Separated from the long words and short words proper, but in relationship to all answers. They set up a whole bunch of excuses and motivations, natures, needs, interests, ulterior from. Juxtaposed. But not that one. That keeps that stupid inter-changing nature of campuses, including medical campuses, fire campuses, EMS campuses. These are database relationships, no. Simultaneously, private industries that have nothing to do with each other. Those are database relationships. That is exploited. That this breaching method knew that it could keep our top-down leaders like former Director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, note in his defending capacities. Because leading up to and in his defending capacities, there are many people tied to him that have roles leading up to and in court cases and interbranch with fabricating audio and video, with identity thefts and fraud. This is the former standing chairperson on the Racketeering Influenced and Corrupt Organization Act. There's an officer, Jerry Miller. Before the coronavirus, he's recorded, confessed, and demonstrated involved with 2 Jerry Kerrs. That New Britain Superior Court also recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. Note they pretend others simultaneously too. But roles with predicate acts with them. Now these are with overt criminal enterprises. Do you ever wonder why they have they talk about gangs running schools and stuff like that, overt criminal enterprises and stuff like that, and they have the people talking about it, like all open about it? Or they have the punishments where, that's how we're going to punish them. Well, what's the opposite? Okay, put some in jail for a long time. Those people are kept with the people that run the jails too, and on off the state offices, on off the state judicial branch offices of Connecticut. Roles were all tied to the same. There's a former detective, Dylan, one of them. There's a Sean Dillon, there's an Anna Dillon, there's a guy with Tom Dillon. I never had a conversation with any of them, but there were a whole bunch of people from Hartford Hospital. Recorded also with the town offices in Weathersfield Police Department, where it was then and now, which is also with the Weathersfield Library, with the town offices. And these are people with foreign countries, legitimately but illegitimately too. These are people who are involved with child abuses, elderly abuses, uses of them standardized interstates as a method that keeps alive progressions, right back to correlation nature's grounded identity. /S note. See, we are the engineering of fact treatment nature can be observed in relationship to how pseudo-ratiocination and how ratiocination share an identity. They share this identity of value progression. They share its identity of relationship to itself, and they share the value of that distinctly, non-distinctly, and simultaneously. Again, visible but still discernible. People want to debate things like that. They have to follow mandated law first. Weathersfield Police, through the past 3 months, they've been playing games with subjects too. This is what they do with the child abuse. They did this with a principal child offender before he was caught. No. This is also because of how they have prosecutors and their family members. They have everyone's neighbors involved with it. Because investigators, and vetting identities have been involved with predicate acts and with the predicate acts delivery system method since everybody was little. Now, that is readily observable when people make opinions about what caused slavery. It was a breaching method. When people make opinions about why and how people are forsaken overtly and from tactically denatured identity of the ground relationships and positions where they have the need for hunger and thirst, converted for a torture method, converted for a slavery method, converted for a nature and method of identity thefts and frauds that forced roles for uses of the propagated fact treatment nature defenses of selves like that, defenses of positive and negative as criminal insidiousness natures of positive and negative and collusion as quality of the identity of the grounds, quality of relationship to itself, the perfect world that is making more of itself, that is also positive unto itself, temporary, lasting, or it is forcing it from here. Leith of Hades. Ancients revealed this, force space nature transfer. I did not read this. We can use correlation nature. There are countless revelations in relationship to what is replacing the simple discorrelation and correlation in relationship to how they left out the databases involved, abridged sciences, self-defended, self-valued, how that was exploited when they speak about American history. When they speak about evidences regarding debates regarding our founding parents. They keep that preaching method employed. Worse than divide and conquer. Worse than pseudo-unity seeking. Criminal synthesis natures of unity that are only capable of being as the locations, areas, and states of hundreds of nations at once, let alone how we are grouped. Then it's worse. We are in an identity of negative value nature progression. Not just self-value, but that's the maintained outcome by a breaching method. That all points of sophistication as modern nations are shock and awe. Victims individually grouped and together. Never having fathomed how this breaching method knew that nature would continue to demonstrate negative value nature progression as acts of nature. And that people would have to react to them. And in reactions to them, even when blaming the right things others themselves would correctly, they would be doing it wrongly. They would be missing how it was as being and having been leveraged. So in other words, to keep such This is a completely fact-cheaping nature oriented, and nature is identity. It's the identity of relationship to itself, and the value of that only increasing. This is one identity of volume that is inseparable from all others. So its identity, its definition is distinctly, non-distinctly, and simultaneously is all others. It is coming anywhere anything is or can be made up. It is coming to, from, and while as that value. And while with it and for it further positive, for it further, positive or negative, for it as itself. It's how we discern how we are positive and negative simultaneously, aware of what is positive and negative, aware of how we are value/value progression. Note simultaneously how we are obfuscated from this, not by color, by the actual pseudoscience, fact-cheaping nature, justification, self-valued roles with all identity, ground, locations, all, let alone the most forsaken. See, if we have a competition, it just stays. It stays breaching method. And it stays both, only capable of causing negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures. The subwords were designed for this archetypal identity theft fraud method. We don't see our neighbors like you do, like you are forced to. And Hartford's a suburban, urban city, no. Because this is where and how the breaching method had sickly, distinctly slavery in the North and the South, where color was about it. Because slavery against everyone, that was the laws. It was way worse than witch trials, even if they made that up, and regarding how they treat such now. That's evidence. See, they want to have fights about evidence. It's the truth you need to have. So they have the evidence obfuscated because they have opinions and convictions worse than interstates, worse than internations. Isms. Democracy. Leaving out mandated law, how it was prevented offensively. How integrity, short words, and long words were prevented offensively. People had to be pretend other offensively. They had to pretend about ethics by playing a theater. That is in collusion with that predicate acts delivery system method. That is simple answers that have been complicated by our experts because they have live progressions from where they work right to all campuses of each age and nature. They have to keep correlation nature, short words, heard, each age of correlation nature. So they switch names into branch. So they value how if we start talking about this, they get caught for what they want to get caught because they're going to get blocked for it. Because then it opens us up for where we share hundreds of nations at once. And involved with our deans. Involved with their family members. Involved with the identity, the ground locations. People who graduate colleges, they go on to professions, including the states and the services people associated with the interbranch. Individually grouped into together, they were recorded methods, criminally foreign hiding their criminally foreign influences. Now we have to address how other nations are keeping this, the method. And as part of it is them pretending to be against racism. And their roles with intercampuses of each age and nature. Worse than obfuscation of the answers and of integrity of science. Only allowed to speak theater, glorifications of words like science. Words/values. Nothing is not an increasing identity of volume. Can't help but be. Because the one identity of volume that generated everything, that is all things at once, it is self-generating. It is an only increasing identity of volume, inherently, actively, and progressively. How it is doing this is from inside that. So from our perspective, it appears as if it's it is 5 distinct, non-distinct, and simultaneous identities of volume, as sequence true before the order of the finite, as the order of the finite, as the order of the active, as the order of the progressive, as the order how we are a quality of diffusion, no progression. We are not just one place, one time. See, we have subjects part, where we should be having subjects qualify towards correlation or discorrelation. Standing treatments of infrastructure and of means to it, individually grouped and together. All opinions and convictions are recorded still vastly criminally foreign influenced and delusions wrought. Being needed to hide, see, identity, ground, locations, jobs, titles, distinctly, they all have how the perfect world is forsaken. Different narratives about, there's nothing they can do about that. Where they are knaves with the finite, with sequence treatments. Therefore, with active treatments, increasingly progressive treatments. What is the progressive value of the people stacking in the infrastructure only capable of being fathomed in Russia, America, and China? Only capable of being fathomed because the suits and ties, all counters to it, hundreds of nations at once, identity, ground, location, science is abridged, self-valued, propagated for the defenses of that. For the what they call debates. That's collusion to all locations, areas, and states where and how branches of government can't help but then you hide live aggressions. This breaching method knew that. It's fluent through our nations. There's no side they care about. That's why when it comes through, it's fake sides. With their motivations to keep. Things like wars. Things like that lead up to it. Things that leave counters to it. Inclusion with that breaching method which leaves everyone worse than tortured. And that's sustained. And everyone blaming others themselves for what that causes and caused. Then they defend that. Those defenses are the value. That's what's the agenda. That's what's needed by the breaching method here and there. This is where and how we are syntax nature. See, the perfect world they can't because of how everyone speaks to other people. We'll examine how confessions needed to be understood. How the branches of government won't let forgiveness, because then we would see what really was going on. People start blaming other things too fast because it takes conjunction with illusions that were posited are posited into databases through all kinds of people's roles already, but no one realizes it because no one's watching that. And the people that realize it, even though they're hurt by it too, they only realize it through their means to realize they need to blame on other things other than themselves. The real causes for negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures that are associated with them and things they were associated with growing up that were criminally foreign influenced and that were uses of that. So dozens of people from the Britain Superior Court and some from Hartford courts and other courts, Middletown courts, when I was a kid and now as an adult, and they confirmed their roles with a whole bunch of federal criminals, foreign people, and co-defendants, a former director of the FBI, ones who are federal criminals also. Before they were caught, they were also involved with more federal crimes with their family members and kids at my schools, and the people involved with the databases like this, and uses of all along routes. So we're going to have to make 3 maps because to counter the Wethersfield police switching names. So they have the name Sullivan. Now they have more people brought up with the Wethersfield town offices in the Wethersfield Police Department. Now they have an office. They have officers forging names, switching names, just saying things, fabricating audio and video into databases. They've been using interbranch locations to fabricate audio and video on those locations. They've been switching names at the same time. So you're just fabricating audio and video, putting people in quotes with fake conversations. There's a Phil Colo I never had anything to do with. And there's a Scalora family. I know of them more than I know of the Phil Colo. But both of them are recorded, confessed, and demonstrated involved with predicate acts on my street and with a principal child offenders campus before he was caught and further now. Now this is also with prosecutors and judges involved with this and with their family members and neighbors. People all along 2 Route Highway where it runs into Hangdog Lane, on off that street. Please respond because so I want a response for this Phil Colo. Because there's also a Yagman family that I recorded, confessed, and demonstrated involved with doctors, involved with drugs with kids, and identity thefts, frauds, falsified police reports with them. Their roles with fabricated audio and video, falsified police reports with 2 Mendez police that are also on and off the Wethersfield Police Department, involved with fabricating audio and video, falsified police reports. Also with this, they also make confessions about roles with such natures of organized crime with the Phil Colo and identity thefts and frauds. I never had anything to do with him, though. He's also recorded, confessed, and demonstrated involved with judges retired and standing and prosecutors retired and standing and people associated with Joe Aiello and his sisters and his family. And they have a place right next to Buckley High School and Hartford. Now these are people also involved with the principal child offenders campus, with friends of theirs involved with identity theft and falsified police reports and libel aggression cover-ups. And they've been using Facebook and YouTube to cover up their libel aggressions. There's a KNERR, people with that last name on Facebook. And there are people inside and outside of New Britain Superior Court that recorded, confessed, and demonstrated their roles with rape threats, with the principal child sex offenders campus, with the New Britain Superior Court. Now this is Wethersfield campuses. Now these are also the people involved with Hartford campuses criminally, and with West Hartford campuses, and with locations next to them. Now there was also Eric Burgess and a woman with Hartford Court confirmed his confessions about roles with predicate acts with judges and military police and with courts and police forms intercity and with New Britain and with people on off Central Connecticut State University. I never saw him on the campus of Central Connecticut State University in my life. He's also involved with the military police from my town, involved with identity thefts and frauds. Fake ties to me, fake natures of ties to me, fake ties to me, roles would attach me to fake locations. Now these are also people recorded, confessed, and demonstrated involved with Central Connecticut State University through time with various natures of courts and their family members, involved with these streets and people, with identity thefts, pretending to record things so they could discredit people that need to say that they don't know them. I don't know this Mark Carone and Kevin Carone. And the other people that said they had the same girlfriend as them at the same time. Had something to do with they made it look like I knew them in a park in Wethersfield, Millwoods Park years ago. Now this is so there's a Mark Violet and there's a Mike Violet, and there are a whole bunch of people with the buildings downtown Hartford, which are around the corner from Fox Connecticut News, but the buildings next to Fox Connecticut News too, in the parking garage, and the where they have the clubs downtown. These are also with a whole bunch of people tied like to these two Mendez police, involved with predicate acts with Fox Connecticut News, with people on the child sex offender registry with them, also with people who answer the phones, retired and standing with the police, on the child with their family members involved further, with people, with doctors involved with their patients before they got caught. They were involved with crimes, worse than crimes. They were involved with natures of identity and theft and fraud myths. You have to be able to counter their predicate acts. Like, for example, the Wethersfield police with others too. See, this is only over the past 3 months. Before that, I've been asking for counter. There are people, before there's an Inspector Mike, and also with Mike Kerr and two Jerry Kerrs, recorded, confessed, and demonstrated. Also with the Aliello family, with a former Mayor Gold. And there are other mayors I don't know. I never had conversations with either. There's a former Mayor Gold involved with the Debbie Gold. And other people like with a Tim O'Brien involved with federal crimes, with evidences and rules crimes and child abuses, natures of identity, methods of identity thefts and frauds, and uses of them, and roles with the uses of them. Because these are also people with recorded, confessed, and demonstrated further connected simultaneously, having been parallel on off the World Trade Center and on off the Ninth Circuit Court right next to it, right before the World Trade Center attack and leading up to it. They were, and since, with the investigators of it, including military, also involved with Hartford Hospital and with the Leahy family. That has whole fake conversations with me. 3 times they forced me to Hartford Hospital. I saw their faces to Brendan Leahy's. I only know who the other one was afterwards because I got it in writing. But the whole fake conversation with me about my family too, and about legal cases too, where he's involved with those federal criminals before they got caught. The defendants in that case that was ongoing at the time of my father's death have fake conversations with me about that. Now this Leahy family is also involved with a Brian Silver that's also recorded, confessed, and demonstrated by people within the Britain Superior Court, involved with switching names and forging names and switching sequences in their court. Now these are people also involved with proven having been post-dating documents, people tied to them with other natures of organized crime acts. Illusions, no. But all with post-dated documents from inside the Ninth Circuit Court, which is right next to the World Trade Center in Manhattan. Right before the World Trade Center attack, they had shown the court legal papers that had been brought to the court on time and time-stamped timely to show that. But then someone from inside the court, or people from, there was inside the court, the papers were post-dated to appear as if they'd been handed in late. And that was presented to the panel of judges. Now there are also people with Central Connecticut State University that attached the defendants, the co-defendants and their family members to fake locations, fake words, fake ties to other people, fake natures of ties to other people. As one's also tied to the child crimes with the child offenders on the sex offender registry before that, including the principal child offender. They were further involved with more then and now with his campus. Now there's a Dillon family involved with this, and this also has the various natures of courts involved with real estate crimes. Because they were hiding how they're preventing people. When they get caught for stuff and people asked for help, because others asked me for help, I didn't know yet how it was tied to the depositions of former director of the FBI and his co-defendants, leading up to a 2006 case. This was since before the World Trade Center attack. All kind of people were making all kind of confessions and demonstrations relevant to where and how the perfect world is forsaken. For example, as people then who make impressions dishonestly when they hear someone yelling in the background. In other words, or someone asks them about that. Investigators, and vetting identities. Because they're preventing people from free speech offensively because they have investigators, and vetting identities influencing people to say things in conjunction with the illusions they pretended, because they've been fabricating audio and video into databases through time. No, I never tried to contact in my life Justin Klavinskis. I don't know his brother's name. But these are people involved with Wethersfield military police that are involved with the predicate acts on, off. Central Connecticut State University also with doctors. Not just this Leahy family involved with prosecutors of New Britain Court, Middletown courts, and Hartford courts, involved with his predicate acts. Now there are various natures of courts, judges, and prosecutors personally criminally involved with them. And they're also with sequence shifts, just speaking lies into and recording themselves speaking it. They have time treatments all ways, too fast, too slow. So we have to get them onto paper. And we have to counter how they've been hiding their lie progressions by having WFSB and others pretend I had relationships to doctors when I was a kid. There's also a woman at Trinity College who's recorded, confessed, and demonstrated involved with a Heather Hansen and with a Joe DeMauro, with sexual circles in the past that had men and women involved with abuses of kids, where and how those now those little good boys and girls are men and women involved with people on the child sex offender registry that are involved with them with other natures of crimes and identity thefts and frauds. I don't know Heather Hansen. I only know her in context, recorded, confessed, and demonstrated, confirmed, involved with predicate acts with judges and prosecutors, and with identity thefts and frauds. And like, for example, a summer school, and with people all along Route 3, which goes by the state judicial branch offices, but right through those towns. People involved with that, as the people through time, there's connections to that all along that route with identity theft, frauds, roles. Sequence shift roles, confession roles as strangers, and uses of that recorded that are Central Connecticut State University in New Britain. These are involved with people that are intercampuses, but there are other colleges and universities recorded, confessed, demonstrated, criminally involved. Now, where they have legality, where they can use the right to lie, where they can be involved with criminality. Our identity is the law, originally and still. Sicker than witch trials. That is our obligation, to attend to non-science, pretending it is science, breaching screens and tools. So since before the World Trade Center attack, increasingly they've been stacking names to prevent what is actually recorded from being told on. Even something to do with the church. Down the street from Eric Burgess is, in other words, he's involved with military police and judges with Hartford courts and New Britain courts and prosecutors with them that are already involved with predicate acts and cases. More seriously than anything that comes in their courts that they put people in jail for. Am I trying to say put all the judges in jail? No, I'm trying to show how and why they're kept needing to hide the same sequence shifts, finite, active, and progressive lies with overt criminal enterprises, private ones, overtly sick people in relevant roles with body dumping spots in the families that live next to it and work next to it. Uses of them, how that was tied to their roles further with a serial killer in the body dumping spot of Billy Grasso, for example, associated with a Faenza family that I don't know. But they recorded, confessed, and demonstrated, confirmed they're involved with others on off Route 3 and on off Two Rod Highway, where and on off the houses on the street right next to the state judicial branch offices, and on off where Two Rod Highway runs into Hangdog Lane. There are a whole bunch of people, like there's a Brian Bonin, also recorded, confessed, and demonstrated involved with all along Route 3, and where I'm in the streets on off Two Rod Highway, where it runs into Hangdog Lane, involved with identity thefts and sequence shifts, falsified police reports rolls, and drug crime rolls, with people associated with Wethersfield Pizza, and with, that area with a Dillon family, involved also with untimely deaths, on off Trinity College, real or made up. It is involved with other natures of predicate acts that were acted on off Trinity College in conjunction with those on off Central Connecticut State University. There was also Detective Samuda, who switched up identities with Officer Magnanos, which is distinct from a union guy named Manos, who's one of the guys from the World Trade Center right before it, who's also recorded, confessed, and demonstrated having been used by the people involved with in other words, former director of the FBI was a defendant and a part of a case that was ongoing at the time of my father's death. But since before that, before I even knew that was going to come up, about that, I was asking to report courts involved with that, who were involved with locations crimes, and confessions that also connected to confessions that were made to me about those locations, intercities, when I was a kid, from strangers. One of them is the Body Don't Be Spot, the serial killer, even if that is made up. Because in other words, there's a Justin Klovinskis and his wife. I don't know his wife. This is where those military police families lie to their wives, and then they pretend passions and emotions about people they don't know. They're also recorded, confessed, and demonstrated involved with database crimes, with people associated with the area around the Samuel Dick's house, and with other military families, and people associated next to schools. That's next to schools, too. And next to Webb School. And now all along, so these are people also intercities, on off Central Connecticut State University, as ones involved with on off Trinity College. With federal crimes, with evidences when I was a kid. And identity thefts and frauds. As people I don't know didn't even have classes with. They made the exception with the Heather Hansen, with the middle school class that was recorded, confessed, and demonstrated, confirmed. They make fake sides of correlation nature, fake sides of fact treatments where they have sequence shifts being and having been self-valued, because they also juxtapose people into making confessions and doing things that they didn't have to hide. They can't be honest about those contexts. I don't know this Joe Aiello. I only know him in context that he was involved with criminally foreign influenced police forms and foreign and identity ground locations, people associated with that, like a DeMoro family, like a Kerr family, per him, and per those people. I never had a conversation. I don't know. I barely know the Kerr family. I only know them through confession. This is where gangs undercover with them in the interbranch are in collusion with also private, and also just because they're using each age of love. These are on off campuses sequence shift roles, identity theft frauds roles. So one time I saw the person of Joe DeMoro, one of the Joe DeMoros. I never saw the other one when I was in grammar school and when I was in 5th grade. And that was the only conversation I had with Mr. Abruzzi. I don't know what he wrote in databases. But when you think back, we had in other words, I had no problems with any people. It had something to do with 2 years before that. A Debbie Gold, who was the daughter of a Mayor Gold. There's also a legal I'd never met, who was recorded, confessed, and demonstrated also by people involved. Further with federal crimes with evidences and child abuse and people on the child sex offender registry that were involved with them and their neighbors. There's also the former neighbors of there's a Allison Mulcahy, and I don't know her sister's name, but Allison Mulcahy's also involved with Thaddeus Grabowski, who's one of the co-defendants of former director of the FBI in a 2006 case. Right before that, and two Mendez police, and a Domain family, two Domain brothers and a Domain their parents are involved with federal crimes with agencies and judges and Wethersfield Police and my town's police chief, and 1 years ago with the same house. Now these are people involved also with the extended family members that are the same age range as me, as their relative on my street. But I never had anything to do with them. A lot of the people that they hung around with, him and one of the Morals, who is a police officer now, reportedly. But those are also that's one of the people involved with the confessions of the Tim and Andrew O'Brien about their parents involved with evidences crimes and with evidence reception crimes and with investigations and vetting identities that are criminally foreign influenced, which is relevant. Also, they have physical delusions. Now, see that their personal confessions of roles into this took down mine and other people's, where they do this on a mass scale, took down our ability to demonstrate. In other words, where and how that wasn't our country's identity. It was a forced identity, fake positive. They have forced fake. How are you going to pretend? How are you going to be exploiting? How are you going to be logic in the furtherance of accepting, even entertaining forsaken locations? And how? And remember that every single location is forsaken. If you separate that out, the quality of fact-cheating nature you're trying to be to attend to the most forsaken locations, it is incapable of defending itself and of fixing that. So you have to understand how slavery was forced on every single, including our founding parents. They were fact-cheating nature slavery. That this is an identity theft and fraud role, per what had already been sustained, but per what was already entrenched here since before they were born. No one had free speech. People had speech forced. People had uses of criminal and seditious nature, of positive and of negative, and collusion, both as positive. Both as negative. We're only temporary positive. So nature's identity of relationship to itself and the value of that is, of course, long not been told nor let. So Wethersfield Police have a wire crime method where you call them, they switch names, they separate subjects, and then they use that time to fabricate audio and video. Now they've been getting away with it because of their roles with FBI and with CIA, with their family members, and with overt federal criminals, killers, people associated with the body dumping spots with other natures of related crimes that are also roles with that person, like the serial killer, with relevant, there are doctors and people with Sandy Hook, Newtown, who are recorded, confessed, and demonstrated involved with federal crimes with their patients and criminals before they got caught. In fact, as roles that were trying as hard as they could to prevent that from being told. by making things up, by their roles, fabricating audio and video. We have some sick, perversively sick, criminally foreign influence readings of statutes and of precedents. We have a whole bunch, dozens of people from the Britain Superior Court and from Hartford courts and from Middletown courts. For example, are recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, involved with Sandy Hook and with people with the 3 spots, excuse me, at the end of the Berlin Turnpike, with identity thefts, frauds, and worse, sequence shift roles, falsified evidence racketeering roles. Now they apparently took a picture of me one time there, near a Fred Grisey. I don't know the Fred Grisey. The only context I know him in is him recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, involved with drug crimes, with private schools, with people associated with the Dillon family, an Ayanna Dillon, a Kevin Dillon, a Sean Dillon. There's an officer, Jerry Miller. There's a Kerr family. These are people involved with fire departments and programs with kids. These are people with WFSB, fabricated audio and video, because they had to hide lie progressions because of the federal crimes that prosecutors and judges were involved with when they were kids, and the long-standing ones when they were adults, long-standing having been criminally foreign influenced. Science never spoke for one identity of the ground location. Marbury versus Madison means real justice must satisfy all appearance of real justice. Doesn't mean it has to play to their fake punk, physical delusions, raw notions of politics. Even though that has only been. It is time. We cannot be free at last until we have the finite, the order of the finite defended, till we have sequence shifts defended, the forced illusions fixed from our databases, uses of them. There is remote uses of every identity of the ground location, every single one, including the branches of government, including how they are individually grouped together, including the protesters. That is a breaching screen, fake sides of correlation nature, and there is maintenance to it. These are roles with maintenance to on-off campuses maintained illusions tied to what they've been doing with the child campuses. There is a Ray Reynolds I also don't know. The only context I know him in are him seeking me out to record, confess, and demonstrate people for speaking through others. I never had a personal conversation with him. I noted the exception one time when I was in kindergarten, and that was at a school that's now an elderly home, and houses next to that are involved with the Weatherfield police personally, criminally, and with the military families, like a schedule family, personally, criminally involved with people in Middletown, on off water locations, with the National Guard, and with the Marine families, and with Coast Guard families. Involve further predicate acts with people on the child sex offender registry who answer phones for the police, retired and standing, and who answer phones for WFSB, and for their roles ducking behind whatever's the extent of it on off their location. But they better fix the fake news and tell the truth about how I never had a relationship to doctors when I was a kid, because these are also people involved with predicate acts on off other campuses, intercities at the same time. So that it is recorded how they made confessions from strangers, like about they have a Joshua Julian and a Joshua Stryker recorded, confessed, and demonstrated roles with the principal sex offenders campus, with their roles with people with predicate acts on off Trinity College and on off CCSU that are also recorded, confessed, and demonstrated roles with Facebook and YouTube with these people. Now, these are a whole bunch of people tied to former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, and with the policing of the schools' Facebook pages and of New Britain Superior Court's Facebook pages that are further involved with rape threats and federal crimes, fabricating audio and video with various natures of police departments, and switching officers' names and switching police departments to do that, attaching people as the same people that were attaching kids and their family members to fake locations, words through time. They have crime methods of asking people questions, asking people around people questions when they report things that they didn't even try to report to have communicate with them about. They're just making up whatever when they get caught, and they are caught. And so what we have to do is focus on how the other nations here and there have what is fluent through them, where they are themselves used and having been used to further such. I will sign that I won't sue UPS because I made them react. But before I went in there, it is recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. There is an Oliveri family, and there is a Justin. Not Justin too, but there's a Joshua Stryker that is also recorded, confessed, confirmed, demonstrated, involved with predicate acts, and been name switching also with deans on off campuses, not just on campus. Now these are also there's a private police and regular police mixing up. One of them says his name is Darth Vader, but he's also all that got involved because that's Harvard, Trinity College, CCSU, involved with the Wethersfield child campuses, and the principal child offender at the time, Joshua Julian has roles with that. See, they've been using the Facebook and the numbers of people associated with that the police know that were involved with identity thefts and frauds against people their own age that they didn't have classes with them. They never saw them around campuses. They tried to make a couple of quick exceptions so they could film such, so they could call people, pretend people are dishonest. The courts and the police forms are recorded consciously, willfully, pretending people are dishonestly, because they've been fabricating audio and video in databases. They've been doing that in other nations. That's why there's negative value nature progressions, acts and natures. They even need to have the words like the environment, to agree about uses of the words like environment, to keep it from nature, to keep it from correlation, to keep it from positive and negative, how positive could be criminal and insidious natures of it. That's the subject where things like slavery come into it. And you don't separate that from the fact-cheap nature slavery of our founding parents who left us correlation nature and obligations to tell about how they didn't have free speech and how they had speech forced per what was sustained to see who's going to try to challenge it. They're going to have to do it way short of being able to secure a unity capable of challenging it. They could only achieve criminal and seditious nature, so they had to put criminal and seditious nature with a counter criminal and seditious nature in it. And we're supposed to liberate that counter criminal and seditious nature. But not by pretending to be trying to do that by pretending to be about voting. By keeping it real. Not by pretending that we have prosecutors that pretend they don't want people to control speech. Because they've been fabricating audio and video. They've been doing sicker things than the only hurt victims sustained per that. Especially, the breaching method is responsible, but especially differentially, many ways. Each branch of government individually grouped and together, their crime methods recorded as evidence are responsible. But we have to have them follow the law, mandated law, and pick one name in sequence, Interbranch Connecticut. And the news, Fox Connecticut News, WFSB, and WTNH also recorded, confessed, and demonstrated that people are involved with them playing softball together. That are also recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, all along Church Street in Old Wethersfield, right around the corner, and that house on the corner of it, of Church Street and Main Street. And all along there, Main Street, right where George Washington had to come to meet the French General Note, right before the last battle of the Revolutionary War, had to leave slavery entrenched in the South and in the North, and here in Wethersfield where he had to meet the French General Note, right next to Hartford, Connecticut. No, where there was slavery too, sickly distinctly from where and how it was in the South. Those surface nations involved with that sickly distinctly were already slaves themselves, their leaders, because all locations, areas, and states were criminally foreign influenced in layers, that were already having been sustained. They were already having